Okay, sounds good. Again, thank you to everybody who's carved out the time to join for this evening's meeting. We'll go ahead and review our agenda so everybody's got a sense of the structure of the meeting, and then I'll pause to see if there's anything else Mike and the project team want to share in an introduction, and then we'll get moving through. So we're in the process of our welcome and agenda review, and then we'll move into an update on the public engagement timeline, and excited to sort of share what that vision is and how it works forward as it's been calibrated given the reality of the timing we are in now and what comes next. Then we'll move into an online engagement overview. And really, this is the key item for our time together this evening. You know, we heard some great feedback during the last advisory group meeting around some things that could do with some additional clarification. And the project team has taken some time to help pull together some engagement materials that we hope will help to achieve those goals, and we're eager to share those with you in draft form to see if there's any feedback you all have that we can incorporate before we move into broader engagement. We'll then pause for some advisory group reflections. We thought since we're very near the tail end of our advisory group process, we'd like to just ask folks, you know, how'd it work for you? How's it going? You know, of course, the county and project team are very interested in continued improvement, and just eager to hear any reflections or feedback about the how we've done what we've achieved together. We'll regroup for some next steps, and then lastly, we will turn over for public comment from members of the public, which I know, looking at the attendee list, it looks like we've got a handful of folks that have joined us to listen in during the meeting, and then perhaps share some comments if you'd like at the end of the meeting. I do want to just really briefly, if we could go back one slide for a second on the how to participate to make sure everybody's tracking. I know some of this is redundant and we're in the virtual meeting world, but important to make sure we're on the same page. We're asking everybody to please participate actively and respectfully. So advisory group, as we're going through the conversation, I know sometimes it can be a little difficult to participate in a virtual meeting. So I'll ask you to maybe participate a smidge more aggressively or actively than you might otherwise. And if it's okay, as a facilitator, I'll try to sort of call on folks and make sure we're hearing from everybody throughout the course of the conversation. As I mentioned earlier, please do mute your line when you're not speaking. We may mute lines if we hear any background noise, and you can always unmute with *6 on your phone or by clicking the phone icon or microphone icon in your Teams screen. If you'd like to chat, you can click the raise hand icon to enter the discussion queue. That's the little hand you see at the top of the screen. But I do hope that at least amongst the advisory group, we're in our 6th meeting, and would encourage folks to just jump in. If we have a lot of crosstalk, I'll make sure that we maintain a discussion queue. But I think it's more important that we have everybody involved in the conversation. And if we have a little overlap, we'll pause, acknowledge that, and make sure everybody's got some space to share and reflect together. You can also use the webinar chat, but again, we're all here as a group, so if it's easier to type something out, that's great. Otherwise, we're very much eager to hear from you verbally. And there will be, as I mentioned, a public comment session at the end of the meeting. And for our final reminder today, today's webinar event is being recorded for future reference. With that, before we jump into our first agenda item on public engagement timeline, Mike, project team, or is there anything that you'd like to share before we get rolling?
I guess I'll jump in and just say thanks again to our advisory group members for all of the effort, all of the time and attention and thought you put into this. We appreciate it and look forward to continuing to keep you guys involved as we go through these next steps that we talk about tonight.
Thank you, Mike. And I think folks can see the participant list on the right side of your screens, but you have the full project team here, including Krista Abel as well from Arlington County, our Vaftelis technical rate study team with Bart and Will. And then, of course, I'm Jason, and you've got Sam on the line as well, taking some notes for our summary. With that, let's turn to our next piece here, and we're going to just walk through our public engagement timeline. So this visual should look familiar, and we made some adjustments to the tail end of it to line it up with where we are now. So you all may recall recently, earlier, we participated in the Rate Study Advisory Group Meeting 5 to review the recommended rate structures and hear some feedback. And now we're in meeting 6 here, which our focus is on reviewing the public engagement approach. And again, we heard some great feedback about ways that we can improve how we communicate where we are. And we're eager to share that with you and hear your thoughts before we turn to our online and broader public engagement. So that's the what comes next. There'll be a broad public engagement using Engage Arlington, which is through the 76 Engage platform, where folks are able to track a number of ongoing Arlington County activities and share comments. Within that platform, there's a lot of great information like the summaries from the advisory group meeting, some more information about the rate study process, the presentations that have been shared throughout the meetings, et cetera. As part of that online engagement activity, there will be a Teams live Q&A session. So that'll be a broad public meeting to share the proposed rate structure and hear verbal comment or chat comment, if appropriate, about that process. And there'll be that period of engagement that ends, and the project team will consolidate feedback and turn to proposing the new rate structure to the Arlington County Board. If the Arlington County Board is to approve the proposed rate structure, then rate structure implementation is anticipated to be implemented starting in January 1st. Lisa or others, anything you wanted to add on the engagement timeline there?
Nope, sounds like you hit all the key points.
All right, we'll keep moving and get into the fun part here. Public engagement and key dates. Just there was one more slide here we pulled together to just share where we're focusing on the budget process and sort of how these things get connected, right? So it's currently the 26th. We have our advisory group meeting. We're anticipating the Teams live forum will be scheduled February 17th or 18th as we coordinate across schedules for a range of public activities. We are anticipating that the public engagement period will be from February 1st to the 21st. This is when that comment form will be open and the site will be launched. And of course, there'll be ongoing engagement as requested and through the process for advisories and commissions. We did want to note, this is specific to the proposed rate structure for our water and wastewater, which is different from the rate itself and is separate, but of course, very directly connected to the overall FY 2022 budget process. So for those not tracking, the advertisement of that rate structure and the overall budget was scheduled to occur on February 20th with a public hearing on April 8th and adoption of the rate structure and budget anticipated on the 23rd. We also, during our last meeting and throughout the project, have heard some great insights about, okay, we understand we need to make some changes to the rate structure to sort of dial it in and calibrate it with best practices and current norms and peers. And we've heard a lot from the technical team about what that can look like. One of the things that we heard was, well, once we figure out what that looks like, we need to communicate it so that it's not a surprise to anybody. So there are some plans in motion for phase 2 education on the new rate structure, including social media updates, website information, emails, and targeted mailings. And of course, the customer contact center will be ramped up with notifications to customers throughout the process. Lisa, anything you want to add or amend there?
Sounds like you hit all the key points again there, Jason. Thank you.
I'm trying. So we'll keep moving here. And well, I guess let me pause. Are there any questions about the schedule or sequence of activities? Open to advisory group members for any questions at this time? I'll give folks a moment. Feel free to just unmute and verbally say, hey, I got a question, or if you'd like to use that raise hand icon, you could do that too. All right, not hearing anything. We'll keep moving. I know schedule and dates are always really exciting, but of course an important foundation for the how we get done while we're getting done. So now turning to the meat of our agenda for our conversation today is around the online engagement overview. So as I mentioned, and you saw in the previous slides, we're moving into an opportunity for broad public engagement. including using the Engage Arlington platform. And we'll be presenting the proposed rate structure and including an opportunity to provide comment throughout. And there are really three key parts of this that we wanted to highlight and get your feedback on today. The first is the rate structures themselves, and we'll turn to this in just a moment. I just want to orient to what we have to share, and then we'll go through each piece and pause for feedback. So we have the rate structure itself, which during our last meeting, we shared that in sort of some chart formats, and we heard some feedback about how we can better clarify what it is we're presenting there to align rate structure with sort of you all as advisory group members are representative of your communities, and it was really helpful to hear your take that, hey, we're not emerged in the project, and when you showed me that, I thought I saw or heard this, and we want to make sure we're communicating effectively. What we think we're saying or sharing isn't always what everybody hears or experiences, and this is an opportunity where we heard your feedback, have developed 3 additional products to help to share the rate structures and connect that to the values activities that informed that process. And we're eager to share those with you and get some feedback. We also have a water bill calculator. And for today, we'll be sharing a demo of what that product will look like. It is still under development, so we'll be bringing up a separate bill calculator just to show you what that's going to include and look like, but wanted to orient and hear if there were any feedback on how we explain what that is and how it works. And then, of course, there's an opportunity to actually share feedback. We have a comment questionnaire there there's a screenshot on the slide of what that will look like, just an open-ended ask and request for any additional feedback on the proposed rate structure. So we're going to walk through those pieces. And first, why don't we turn to the single-family resident rate structure piece. Lisa, if you could bring that up. And I'll actually, Lisa, why don't you walk us through this? And there's a couple interactive components, so hoping we can sort of click through and experience it, and then we'll pause for some questions on this.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason, and good evening, everybody. As Jason mentioned, the feedback that we got during the last meeting was that having all 3 of the customer categories on one slide was a little bit confusing. So what we've done here is we've broken out, this is actually the single family residential rate structure. So at the top, it basically just defines what single family is as it applies to townhomes and duplexes as well. On the left-hand side, we talk about, or we give some instruction on how this interactive publication works. And you'll notice that there are question marks that are sort of tied to the new components of the rate structure. And if you hover over those or click on those, then another box will pop up to give more information. There's also a video icon as well that just lets users know that if you click the icon, then video will pop up. To the right, there's basically just a summary. A lot of this is the information that you guys got throughout the process in the RSCAG meetings, but just to bring users along to where you guys are, this describes basically the new components of the rate structure. So we talk in here about equity among customer classes, and then we introduce what the new components are, those being for the single family rate structure, the base charge, the tiered rate structure, and then average winter consumption. So again, when you click on the icons, participants can see the values that are actually tied to each of these components, and then they can get a definition of what the base charges are and what that means, in terms of their billing. So I'll just click through so you can get a sense. So with the tiered rate structure, the values that were tied to this particular component are affordability and conservation. And then with average winter consumption, not tied to a value, but noting there that this was a top concern for residents. We recognize that average winter consumption is also a very deep topic. So for this particular component, we also tied video to it. This may or may not be the video that we use, but this is a snippet from meeting 5, where the consultants go into a deep dive and explain what winter consumption actually is. So you guys will remember this piece. I don't know if you can hear that audio or not, but you'll remember us sort of walking through 2 slides on average winter consumption, and users could do that as well. And I'll just mention while we have this up that I've tested this a bit on the telephone as well. And while it is small, you are able to see each of these components. So it is visible on a cell phone or a mobile device. Then once users have sort of dived into this chart, they can go back to the 76 Engage platform, and then there are actually 2 more tables that go through the same components for the commercial sector as well as the multifamily sector. Those rate structures not being as complex, so each one of those basically just go into the definition of the base charge.
Thank you, Lisa. And just making sure that we're connecting the dots here. The development of these products is in direct response to feedback from you all as an advisory group, sort of saying, hey, that chart with everything in one spot wasn't really clear and it's hard to see what's what. So as Lisa highlighted, this pulls out just specific for single family residential. So if you're in a single family residential home, this is the one that you might find yourself checking out. And you've got some of those explainers for each of the components. I want to just open the floor and curious for reactions. Is this something that is helpful? It's draft. If there's feedback, we'd be very eager to hear it. How do advisory group members, what are your reactions for this product?
Well, I'll start. This works well for me, I'll say. But Lisa, I'm so much older than you are that I can promise you I wouldn't be able to see these individual elements on a cell phone because I can barely see them on my laptop. So now, I'm not suggesting you need to make them such that people can see them on their cell phone. I think almost anybody that has access to a smartphone probably has a computer, or they have access to a computer at an Arlington County library. So if they really want to see this stuff, they can see it. But I would only provide that a modest comment that I don't think I'd be able to see this on my phone for whatever that's worth.
Understood. And
for those on the phone, that was some feedback from Peter Robertson. And if advisory group members, you could please share your name before speaking, just for those on the phone to track, that would be helpful. Thank you for the feedback, Peter. I think it's sort of one of those design challenges, and appreciating that there may be some additional testing, and we'll see if there's some tweaks to help, but that ensuring it's available on the web in a accessible format is key and priority over a mobile experience. Did you have any reactions to the comment or structure of the information, Peter?
Let me just reemphasize that I think it's terrific. Seeing this again helped refresh in my mind, exactly what the elements of this are and how they'll work. And I think this is really, really good. Thank
you, Peter, and kudos to Lisa for the process and development here. Hytham, I see your hand up. What are your reactions? What do you think?
Hi, everyone. It's Hytham Garyani. I think it's very nice. I do have some feedback on the usability or the readability of this chart. The first place, or maybe the only place I see the 1,000 gallons is in the existing structure, but it's actually only used in the proposed structure table. So I think it's more useful to have that heading in both tables, just so it's clear what that is.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Thanks, Hytham.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe it's worth adding the TG to the existing structures so it's clear what that price is, because that probably is meaningful for it to be in both. For the values, I think it would be more useful for the first heading to say definition and put the values below on their own category versus mixing the heading being the values in one question mark and then it actually being a heading in the other question mark, just for consistency. That's all I had. Thanks.
So making sure I'm tracking on that part with the where you were sharing that feedback on the values piece, it would be taking some of that bold next to values and adjusting.
Well, no, I would just say that this is the definition. That would be the heading of what this is, and put values below it. Because if you look at your last question mark, it uses an actual heading that's not the values, but is some other heading. So and it was mentioned during the presentation that they're use a different kind of heuristic to make people understand. And I think it'd be better if they were both similar.
Thank you, Ethan. I'm tracking now. So that would say base charge at the top, then the description, and then underneath would say values and what those connected values are.
Yeah, got it. Thank you for that.
What are others thinking? I know, Mike, you're only on the phone, so maybe we'll make sure that you get a copy of this digitally to take a quick look at and share any feedback offline. It can be difficult to see that pop-up experience, even in our best attempt to verbally describe it.
Hi, this is Bob Ortung. I just had a quick question on the proposed structure. The tier 1 and tier 2 are, so it's 384. Is that per 1,000 gallons if you use between 0 and 9? And then if you use more than 9, then it jumps up to 614 for each 1,000 gallon. Is that right?
Yes, so the cost for the first 0 to 9,000 gallons is at that 384, and then once you exceed that, the subsequent gallons above 9 are at that 614 price. But again, this is the proposed rate structure, and the proposed rate itself obviously connected to this process, but that rate will shift over time. The structure is the representative of that there are 2 tiers, and that 9,000 gallons was that threshold between tiers. Mike and team, is that correct? And anything you would want to add? Bob, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it just took me a while to figure it all out, but I think that it's clear. Because, especially with the per 1,000 gallons over there under the existing structure, right? So that you might repeat that just so people see it. But yeah.
Thank you for
that was a good point. Thank you. And one of the things that we'll work on clarifying is, the base charge is per, on the residential side, it's per quarter for the base charge, and then the tiered water usage would be per 1,000 gallons. So that's a good clarifying point. Thank you for your comment.
This is Haytham again. I think we reviewed this in our last meeting, but what percentage of consumers would end up being in the tier 1 category?
Bart, do you want to jump in with the response here? I know that during the previous meeting in that PowerPoint deck, there was some slides that showed sort of average consumption of different user types within classes and sort of what the majority of consumption was that was between 0 and 9. I don't remember those stats off the top of my head.
I'll try to do my best off the top of my head, but I think that the lowest quartile, so that would be kind of, up to 25% of the customers was about 8,000 gallons. So obviously they would fall in that bracket. So probably, somewhere around, maybe 35% would sort of fall on there would be, and again, I apologize, I don't have that in front of me, but I think that's in the ballpark. And then the sort of typical customer uses about 12,000 gallons a quarter. So, the typical customer would exceed the 9,000 gallons. They would get the 384 up to the 9,000, but they would pay the high rate above that. And that would be a typical customer using about 12,000 gallons.
Thank you.
The 978 against in the summer would be using the winter level for your sewer. Is that
correct? Yeah, so that will be based on your winter period consumption is how you'd be billed for sewer. That's correct.
Okay, I think I'm not sure what the best way to maybe it'll be obvious to people, or maybe there should be some sentences that point out this is presumably for people watering their lawns won't be charged. It's one way to keep them from being charged the sewer billing. Is that?
That's sort of the central focus of it. Is it addresses the water that's not returned to the sewer system in the summer? Correct.
Okay. Somewhere that should be made as a major point. I remember we had discussed that early, and I missed the last meeting. But and it, I think it's important for people to realize. I don't think anybody will be mad at it, and I think some people will be very happy. So.
Thank you for highlighting that, Herschel. And I know that if you would get a chance to check out the presentation from the last meeting, that will map quite closely to the meeting, the presentation and information we'll be using during the public Teams event coming up in February. So we are hoping to be able to reuse some of that content, of course, improved with resources like this.
Presumably anybody who is giving a oral briefing on it should make that point, and with heavy emphasis, I think.
Thanks for the suggestion, and I think that tracks with the project team's interest in being responsive to public engagement. And given that was something we heard loud and clear in the values part of the engagement process, it'll be important we show that we've heard that and responded by incorporating this and explain what it means. Hatham, I know you had a question in terms of the use percentage. Was Bart able to address that, or is there something else that you were looking for there? You may be on mute if you're sharing. Hey, did we cover your question, or is there more you'd like to explore on the use and percentages?
Oh, I'm good.
Thank you. Sorry to directly ask and loop back. I just like to make sure we've answered questions where we can, and then where there are additional comments or feedback, we want to make sure we're hearing it. Before we move to demo some of the two other rate structure one sheets, is there any other comments or feedback around the residential rate structure sheet?
Yeah, this is, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I see Lily, you're gonna have a comment. Bob, any other advisory group members want to jump in here? Just so I know, if you can let me know, we'll get a queue going.
So just a quick question about how, I guess, accessibility for all residents would be, will it be in various languages? Will there be any printouts, or is it only electronic? Or I guess how to access some of those folks who might not even have the English skills or the tech skills to view this?
Great question, Lily. And that what we're looking at right now is actually what we do plan to translate. We are thinking that we're going to translate these tables. We will into Spanish. We will probably also translate our FAQs, as well as there are a couple other documents on the project page that we anticipate translating. You jumped ahead to one of the things that I was actually going to ask as we went through the presentation, accessibility. And we rely heavily on this virtual world. And, pre-COVID, when we would get to a point in the project, as we are now, we would pop up and we would, show up at existing events, and, we would come to go to wherever we need to be to get the word out. So if there are print pieces that you think would be valuable, or, things that you would like us or you would like to see, that's certainly something that we can consider. We're just sort of leaning on you guys as the advisory group to tell us, yes, this is something that's needed. And if there are languages beyond Spanish, we do have, I think in Arlington, the top 5 languages, and we typically, with these types of online engagements, at least translate into Spanish, but if there are others, certainly let us know.
Talking on mute to myself there. Thank you for the feedback, Lily, and appreciate the additional explanation there, Lisa, on the plan for translation. Bob, I think you're next in the queue.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make a small, I guess, and subtle point, which is that on the tier 2, with the sewer rate being the same as the tier 1 sewer rate, obviously, as you said, that responds to all the feedback you got from people who water their lawns, and the water won't be going back into the sewer. But I think, the point here would be, it looks a little funny to have those rates the same from an equity standpoint. And obviously, the democracy element was that the people who spoke up got the attention, and so the rate there wasn't increased. But then the people who didn't speak up didn't get the attention. So the base charge obviously is going to affect the poorest residents of the county more heavily proportionally than the richer residents of the county. And obviously those folks didn't complain about it, whereas the ones who are watering their lawns were able to complain and say, hey, we shouldn't pay extra sewer. So I don't know, just from an appearances look and from a very subtle way that the input process works, where some people obviously have the resources to participate and others don't, that might affect the way, the outcomes here, even though you're trying to respond to the public that participates isn't necessarily the same as the public that exists in the county. So it might be a little skewed. So I just think, I don't know, you might think about that the perception here that keeping the sewer rate the same for the 2 tiers might give the perception that it's not very equitable. So I don't know, it's just a very subtle point, but I just wanted to make that point so you'll think about it as you go into the public presentations.
Thank you for highlighting that, Bob. And I hope some of the slide content, which we will be sharing during the public teams meeting and that we've reviewed with you all during the meeting number 5, that talked about some of the impacts to average bills based on those consumption types, helps to highlight that. One of the other things that we thought would be really helpful to just make it really concrete for folks was the development of the bill calculator, so folks can actually see what the impact will be to their bill based on the information they put into the calculator. And we're going to review that in just a moment. The other thing I do want to note, and there is some good analysis on the breadth of engagement that we had. I fully appreciate, of course, your comments, Bob, in terms of who's able to participate in that process, but also hope that the project team's approach and engagement plan to convene this advisory group and hear feedback from you all that would help to get some representative perspectives of a wide range of communities, along with the engagement that we were able to do pre-COVID, and some of the pop-up and other activities help to get some more voices into the fold. So there's something there about being able to clearly communicate what the range of engagement and participation has been, to be able to show what those impacts are. When you see these numbers, what does it actually mean when it stacks up against bills for folks that may be consuming less or more, and given their housing type as well. And of course, that does play into the rate structure between single family, commercial, and multifamily as well. And then, of course, the bill calculator is just like, being able to respond directly to the concrete ask of what does this mean for me? So maybe I would propose, if folks are comfortable, if there's anybody else that wants to jump in, please just go ahead and do so. Otherwise, I might suggest maybe we quickly pull up the other one sheets for commercial and multifamily, so you can see what that looks like and how we're communicating it. As Lisa flagged, it's very similar to what's here. It really just highlights that base charge component. And then we'll look at the bill calculator. So for commercial, you can see it's very similar. I think we'll sort of copy paste your feedback from the single family residential in regards to the design and structure for that base charge pop out, and the way the 30,000 gallon information is shared. Let us know if there's and then them jumping to the multifamily. Sorry, thank you, Lisa. And then we'll see if there's any other questions on these one pagers. For the multifamily, you can see that information is here as well, with the proposed rate structure for this multifamily class. And similarly, we'll incorporate that feedback, and the pop-up focuses on that base charge element and in defining what that is. So Bob, I don't know if that'll be helpful with the bill calculator, but trying to make sure we're sharing as clearly as we can across the range of input, and great technical advice as well from the Raftellus team in designing this rate process and structure, and of course the county's decisions on what will be proposed. Anything else on the one sheets, or should we switch gears to the calculator?
Well, this is Bob Orton again. I'm just gonna say the base charge there was for monthly, right, rather than quarterly. So I don't know, I think that was one point that you were gonna make clear. So obviously that would be good to make it clear. I think that's right.
Do you think that the way that that's structured in the chart works, or should we just make sure we're verbally highlighting monthly differently?
I don't know, because, well, the other one was quarterly, as I understood. The base charge was quarterly, and this base charge is monthly, just so. I think, I'm not sure if you changed it, because the last time around, one was quarterly and one was monthly, so it was a little confusing, but.
Yeah, this is where splitting them out into separate one sheets, I think, was one of the approaches to just help be able to clearly communicate, okay, for commercial, this is what it's going to look like as proposed.
Mm-hmm. And there's no tiers here, so that might raise some questions too. But otherwise, it looks okay.
Thank you for the feedback. Regina, just curious, they had a little bit more time to digest this. Any reactions or feedback on the one sheet here?
No, I just wanted to take a look and see what the commercial looked like compared to the other two.
I think it would be useful to have some kind of not replacing these, but something on a single sheet that had the comparison, because that would then people could see the difference of the monthly versus the quarterly in one place, or maybe even make it both quarterly on a single sheet, or something that if people wanted to compare the commercial and the private, they could do that. It would pop out at that than having to figure it out themselves, or object to something and then get corrected.
Sure. Thanks for flagging that, Herschel. I know the project team had looked at a different way to present the previous mashup of the three together in a chart format that it didn't have the rate information, but it explained what each of the classes were and sort of what the components are to each rate, as a way to share that in one spot. So maybe that's something we'll revisit to see if we can find a clear way to present that in one spot. I really appreciate that feedback, Herschel, and that folks will want to understand, well, what does it mean for me, but also be able to see across the proposed rate structures.
Is there also in the aggregate at some point you might want a table that shows how much is being collected from the estimates of how much it's being collected from each group?
Sure, I think there's some information that could be presented on that, and we'll just highlight that the approach here is it's cost recovery around use, so it'll be helpful to show what that means in terms of what has been the project team deemed as a required value for fiscal responsibility and being able to have rate structures that recoup the county's costs associated with service delivery. I don't know if Bart or Mike or Krista, anything else you would want to add on that front?
I was going to say I really appreciate that comment from Herschel. I think I think most people are very surprised when they find out how much of the utility fund revenue comes from our multifamily and commercial properties. To remind everybody, it's about 70%. And I think that can help ground people as they look into this and figure out what's going to happen to them at their single family home.
The commercial, I mean, the apartment, multifamily, those are not individually metered typically, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Certainly at condominiums and and apartments, they're all just metered at the 1 meter for the building. In our townhouse communities, those are a little bit more heterogeneous. Some of them are individually metered. Each townhouse has an individual meter or individual account with us, whereas some townhouse communities will have just a single master meter. And very few, I'm not aware of any. It's very uncommon for a building owner or manager to meter behind our meter. That's very uncommon.
So to the extent there's any response to these charges in terms of individual behavior, presumably that's not happening in an apartment house because they don't see
that is definitely a challenge. You know, and Regina may be able to speak more directly about the impact. But yeah, that is a challenge. You have a tragedy of the commons situation. You can have a tragedy of the commons situation in multifamily buildings.
Well, not hearing anyone else jump in, I'd like to propose we move to the bill calculator and keep working through our agenda. So why don't we go ahead and bring that up? So this is a sample bill calculator. The Arlington County bill calculator is under development. We didn't have that ready to share, but it's going to look quite like this. It includes the ability to select your customer type, your meter size, and your anticipated usage. One of the other differences is that with the Arlington County calculator, and please project team correct me if I'm off here, but you'll be able to enter your specific information to be able to see what that specific bill might look like under the proposed rate structure. And by specific, I think that's address is the orientation. Is that correct?
Close, yeah. So what it's actually going to do will be you'll be able to enter an account number and it will pull up your bill, and then you'll also have the ability to kind of overwrite your consumption to see what would happen if you changed your consumption behavior and how it would affect your bill.
Thanks, Bart. I knew there was a way to connect the dots. I just couldn't recall if it was address or account number. And then nice that you'll be able to also more or less play with those numbers and see if I were able to reduce my consumption, what would that mean? If I increased it, what would that look like?
So, presumably it's going to say quarterly, not bi-monthly, or I mean that's just.
Yeah, the city of Ventura, California has a different billing structure than Arlington County, that's for sure. So we're working as quickly as we can to get these things ready for public engagement. So, appreciate that this is hopefully tangible in what we're going to be looking to achieve here. And, the specifics will shift to reflect the tool that Raftelis team is building for Arlington County. I just want to check in. Do folks think something like this is useful? It's very concrete, right? And it's very personal to the account or the individual interacting with the tool. Any thoughts or feedback?
I think it's a great idea. So.
Sorry, this is Regina. I think it's a great idea, and it'd be great to have this for every year, which I know you guys haven't had any proposed increases in a while, but just as for budgeting, it'd be great to have this tool available in the year's future, like ongoing.
Thanks for the feedback, Regina and Herschel.
Yeah, Regina, we are planning on putting this onto the county webpage. Once we transition from the communication and the engagement portion of the rate study onto kind of the ongoing operationalizing the rates, all the results from the rate study, we will have this as part of the webpage. Thanks for your comments.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, this is Bob Wertung. I think it's also great. And the only comment I have is that I wouldn't have any idea what my meter size is. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a part of the Arlington one, but it might be something to think about.
I see a head shake no from Bart, so. it sounds
Yeah,
like
you,
that's
you
a-
won't have to worry about that. It won't be applicable in the county.
Can you show us how it might look for the multifamily residences?
I think I'll jump in. It would look the same. So you'll have so multifamily resident, an apartment manager, for example, would be able to go in and type in their account number. They have to type in verification of the numeric portion of their address. So 918 South Barton Street, for example. And it would pull up the same information. It would pull up their account information pre-populated into the model, and then allow for the user to overwrite that information. That would be, so it'll have the exact same functionality and look essentially the same for a multifamily user. I would presume that would only be useful or primarily be used by an apartment management company or an HOA association. Again, we don't foresee much, if any, engagement from individual unit dwellers. Again, it gets back to that challenge we have of not having a direct relationship with those customers.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And then I just would also add that in the 76 Engage platform, when you get to the point where you're going to, select the proposed rate, the link says, I am a single family resident. I am a commercial business owner. And then the third link is I believe it's manage or own multifamily property. So I think it makes it clear that, the difference between what these different rate structures are. And I'm hoping that clears up confusion for residents of multifamily dwellings versus single family residents.
Not hearing anybody else jump in here. Maybe we can go back to the slide and just briefly, the third piece that we wanted to highlight was the opportunity for folks to share feedback and questionnaires. So through that Engage Arlington platform that Lisa mentioned, you'll have the opportunity as you click that link to go to a place that says share your feedback on the proposed rate structure. And there'll be this text field where you can share comments or feedback on the rate structure. And we're eager to hear more and have the opportunity for folks to share feedback via Engage Arlington, via the Teams meeting, and other channels as appropriate. So those are our sort of the three marquee items, as it were, for our online engagement overview. Any other comments or feedback on these engagement materials before we keep moving? All right. Just next up, the sort of communication and public engagement tactics. So these are things that are ongoing, but we've got the ongoing broad communication and public engagement. That's that web page, 76 Engage, or otherwise known as Engage Arlington, the mailers, and then existing county communications. We have the Rate Study Community Advisory Group, you all, which has thank you for all of the time and commitment to the process and the feedback along the way, helping shape that early values process, helping review and provide input as things come together. And then we've got the Teams live Q&A session as our main sort of synchronous, same time, same air quotes place in a virtual place. For one and all to come and join and hear about the proposed rate structures and share comments. And then, of course, connecting in existing community events as requested and through the process that the county advances with partners, commissions, and other groups. So just sort of recapping all the things that are going on into this process. And I'd like to turn now to advisory group reflections. And we've got a slide for this, but if the conversation allows, we can bring more videos up, whatever makes sense. So I think we wanted to just have some open space to hear, okay, it's been halfway through the six meetings. Was the advisory group process, how did it meet your expectations for what this was going to be? How has the meeting structure worked? The communications before and after, anything and everything that you might want to share about sort of how this has unfolded would be, this is an opportunity for an open floor for advisory group members to reflect on your participation in this process and as an advisory group.
I'll jump in. I just want to say thank you very much for putting this group together and having different divisions or communities. You've got commercial, residential, and you're taking in everyone's thoughts around this and not just looking at one community directly. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for that feedback, Regina, and for participating. It's definitely important that the advisory group had some diverse representative participation.
Jason, it's Peter Robertson. I've been on, it's either 3 or 4 of these types of advisory committees separate from the FAC, which is, where I come from my membership. And this one has worked better than any of the others that I've been on. I think the county does a great job in these sorts of things, but I just think the level of engagement that you've provided to all of us, the ability to ask questions, the county staff and the consultants, Bart and his group, have really just done a fantastic job. I'm an environmental attorney by training, and so this stuff is like mother's milk to me. So maybe I have a skewed view on it, but I thought everybody did a terrific job. I've been really pleased.
Thank you for the kind words, Peter, and really Mike, Lisa, and Krista for the leadership in pulling this process together and driving with the county. Kudos to the team. What are others thinking? Lily?
I'll say that this is the first of this type of committee that I've been on, so I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. And for a topic that I really knew very little about beforehand, you guys really explained everything so clearly, and it made it easy for us to contribute and be engaged. So thank you all.
Thanks, Lily. Appreciate the feedback.
I thought it went well, and I think as a separate matter, well, it was part of it, but the tour I thought was useful and sort of more some publicity about the availability of tours would probably be useful. I sent a couple of people on the one of the groups I'm part of information, but of course it was information just before everything shut down. But I think that's kind of useful for getting rid of or at least dealing with some of one part of the complaints, I guess, that people have about the system, to actually see how complicated it is, and then seeing the water flow out back into the streams. So I thought that was very good.
Thanks, Herschel. And I know that kind of activity is hearing your appreciation for the value that it can add in educating and making something that doesn't really feel that concrete in terms of a rate structure connected to the concrete infrastructure and service that the county provides. Who else wants to jump in?
Hey, all, Mike Mesmer here. Again, I want to thank you all for allowing us to participate in this. I echo both Peter and I believe it was Herschel's comments regarding how easy it was to navigate, what we were trying to achieve here. I had limited experience on how a utility rate structure was even, contemplated and achieved. You all made it very easy for me to regurgitate it back to my commission in a manner that I was able to keep it simple and had a few questions. So that was really good. And the tour was amazing. That answered the why. I didn't know I could actually, as a citizen, tour. And I thought that was fabulous. And it gave us a little bit of opportunity to get to know each other out of the working group session. And I think y'all really facilitated the session well. You stick to the agenda. You hit all the talking points. You allow for public comment, which is critical. And some way, somehow, we always finish on time. So, kudos to that. That's really, really hard. That's all I have.
Thank you for the feedback, and I definitely appreciate, I think one of the things to highlight there, that if we did from your perspective, a good enough job communicating with you that you could communicate with others, which is one of the core goals for the advisory group, was to be able to help make sure that we were reaching through partners into broader sets of the Arlington County community, and being able to do that clearly and concisely while challenging around technical subject matter like a rate structure. That's definitely will always be a challenge. I appreciate the feedback.
This is Herschel again. I might add, it just occurs to me that as someone who was exposed to sort of pricing of this kind of thing over 60 years ago, I was impressed with what I was dealing with here. So,
thanks, Herschel. I think there are two other advisory group members on the line. I'm curious if you've got any reactions you want to share, if you haven't shared yet.
This is Hatham. I don't have anything to add. I think people have said it well.
Yeah, this is Bob Ortung. I would agree with all my colleagues that this was very well done and very interesting, and I definitely learned a lot. The one takeaway I had was like how hard it is to communicate these different issues and values and what's trying to be accomplished here. So I think you did a good job communicating that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Not to be a downer, that was all wonderful feedback, but is there anything that we can do better in advisory group communications, planning, participation? We really sincerely, I've heard the charge from the project team that we want to continue to improve these activities.
Well, this is Bob Orton. I do have one more thought, which is one thing you might think about doing is communicating the values. So like, I think what's going to be important for a lot of residents in Arlington County these days is equity value. And I think one thing that doesn't come through as clearly as it should is that the rates for the people who live in the multi-unit housing are not going to go up. And that's really, those are generally speaking the poorest residents in the county. So if you want to communicate that value, you might communicate the values and then show how the rate structure meets the values rather than showing the rate structure and bringing the values in. So you could do it both ways. I think a lot of Arlington residents would be concerned about the value and sort of show how, here's equity and here's how we meet that equity by not really raising the rates on the multi-unit housing. And then you could go into the rate structures, but it might be good to communicate how you meet the values that people said were the most important values. So I think that's one more suggestion, but I think otherwise it's very good.
And Bob, maybe I can, just listening and hearing you talk, one of the things that we're thinking about are ways that we can help to emphasize and capture this, and really wanting to make sure there's space for your feedback as an advisory group to come through. One of the things that other advisory groups have done with the county has been either nominated someone to draft or had the project team, the neutral facilitators, draft something that reflects key things that you might want to emphasize across the process. And then we can circulate that to you all for feedback. And if it's appropriate, you all as an advisory group or individuals can sign that as a letter or memo to the process. So I'm just curious if that's something that you all might be interested in. And if so, we can kind of go around the horn to advisory group members to see what would you want to emphasize in something like that. It's just another way to be able to help drive some of this feedback home and make sure that we are broadly communicating with the county board and with the public. I know that's another ask, but I'm curious, for those on camera, for interest, are you sort of like, yeah, sure, fine, or I don't know, do I have to do a lot of work, or like, I don't want to go through that? I saw, Bob, your hand went up. Was that like a, yeah, sure?
I guess, why not?
So yeah, sure, Herschel, okay, Peter. Hatham, Mike?
I did have another point.
Sorry, Herschel, I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to check in, because if this is a consensus action item, then we'll go ahead and advance that, but I don't want to overstep. I see Regina's yes. Mike and Hatham, I think we're missing Hatham, yes. Mike, what do you think?
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you. And then Herschel, back to you.
On the issue of what happens to people who can't pay their bills and I don't know what the policy of the county is, but the point I related to what we've been talking about the whole time is that it's not the job of the utility to pay that bill. If the county thinks the bill should be paid, it presumably comes from some other part of the county budget. This is not a system in which some users subsidize other users, or to some extent they could be with the rate structure, but separate from that, if there is some need to cover bills, it's really up to the rest of the county budget to cover that as they would if a rent supplement or something like that. And I don't know where you make that point, but of course there was an early point that was made to us, which is that this is a fund which covers its cost, and if there's some if the county wants to cover somebody's bill, they do it elsewhere in the budget.
So I'm hearing a second thing that we could integrate into that draft letter for your review would be just really emphasizing it's a cost recovery system, and that the county has other programs that are available for support for folks that need it, but that the utility structure itself is cost recovery, and we can explain more about some of that information. I think we presented back in meeting 2, maybe. I think we went into detail on what that looked like. What else would folks like to emphasize or incorporate into your reflections on the process or into this letter? Short and sweet. I'm hearing, please don't make me read more than a page. Noted. Well, appreciating time and the feedback that we heard that we always end on time. Maybe we'll keep moving through the agenda. So I just want to recap. We heard from all the advisory group members that are here with us today, support to draft a letter for your review, and that letter might highlight the cost recovery and support functions, and then the equity component. We'll also, part of our job, Sam and I, as independent facilitators for the process, can synthesize some of the other feedback that you shared during today's conversation to just kind of flush that out. So we'll take the pen to do some of that work for you on your behalf based on what we heard from the conversation. But I really do want to emphasize that it is your letter and your project process in terms of what you're deciding to include there. So we're going to make it easy to review and share feedback. But we'd also like to just add as an action item, if there's anything else that comes to mind after this conversation that you're like, hey, wait a second, when we talked about XYZ, that was really critical. We had that values exercise and I don't know, whatever it was, value number 3 was the one that really resonated for me. Feel free to send us an email or reach out individually so we can make sure that we incorporate that into this process. So we'll review sort of the summaries that we've got and primarily the conversation from today and pulling that together, and look forward to your feedback and as appropriate, then signatures. So I'm going to turn us back to our agenda here. We are shifting gears into our, I think we had Q&As next, but I'm pretty sure we had appropriately covered anything from the advisory group and folks jumped in. So we're going to turn it over for public comment. And we'll ask for any members that are on the public, you're welcome to please click the raise hand icon, that little icon at the top of your screen, and join a discussion queue, or let us know in the chat, hey, I would like to share now, and we'll weave you in. I'm not sure how many are on the line that might have interest. Also happy for folks to just verbally jump in if there's any crosstalk. We'll ask for folks' forgiveness and presumption of good intent, and we'll structure a queue appropriately. Are there any members of the public that would like to share comment? Not seeing any hands go up yet. If you're trying to speak, you may still be on mute. You can unmute if you're on the phone with *6 or click the little microphone icon at the top of your webinar or Teams screen. I hope folks didn't hear the end on time and think, well, now we have to exceed expectations and end early. If you've got comment we're excited to hear, please jump in and share. All right, I'm going to do a last call. This is our public comment session for this evening's Rate Study Community Advisory Group, our meeting number 6. Are there any members of the public that are joining us virtually or on the phone tonight that would like to share any comment? Please let us know now. Otherwise, we're going to move towards wrapping up. All right. Well, there will be, of course, additional opportunities for comment through the process that we just previewed with you all tonight. And I know we're excited as some next steps to pull together that letter piece that we talked about, but also incorporate your feedback into revisions to those 3 key engagement products and keep building out that Engage Arlington site. So we're ready to go, anticipated next week. And we'll communicate some updates on specific dates. And of course, reach out to the advisory group directly once the Teams Live event date is confirmed, in hopes that you might be able to join as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike and Lisa and Krista and the project team if there's any closing remarks or anything else you want to add.
I would just wanted to say thanks again for the feedback. I will echo what Jason said. If you think of things after the meeting's over that didn't come to mind with regards to public engagement, the materials that you saw or materials that you didn't see that you'd like to see, as always, please feel free to reach out. And I just wanted to also extend my thanks to the Rate Study Advisory Group. You guys were awesome. And I may miss these meetings.
I'll just echo that. Thank you all. We really appreciate it. It's the mark of a great community to have our residents and our community members that want to engage and engage productively in civic life. And so that's I think we all are seeing how that is so important these days. So thank you for doing that.
And I'll echo their comments as well. Just thank you to the whole RSCAG for your very thoughtful engagement the whole time. I've been impressed time over time with all of the questions and all of the comments that you guys have made throughout the process. You know, we're passionate. It's what we do. And it's a blessing to have a community that's so engaged and willing to learn and to help us out with these processes. So thank you so much. So appreciative.
Well, now I feel like there should be some, you know, raising a glass of fresh water or something to acknowledge the process. I wish we were together to take a moment and socialize and reflect a little bit, maybe in a different time. With that, we are adjourned this evening. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.